replied the old woman, with affected ignorance. "Question those who stole her. I have set you on the track. If you fail in pursuing it, come to me. You know where to find me." "You shall not go thus," said Mistress Nutter. "I will have a direct answer now." And as she spoke, she waved her hands twice or thrice over the old woman. In doing this, her figure seemed to dilate, and her countenance underwent a marked and fearful change. All her beauty vanished, her eyes blazed, and terror sat on her wrinkled brow. The hag, on the contrary, crouched lower down, and seemed to dwindle less than her ordinary size, writhing as from heavy blows, and with a mixture of malice and fear in her countenance, she cried "Were I to speak, you wouldn't thank me. Let me go." "Answer!" vociferated Mistress Nutter, disregarding the caution, and speaking in a sharp piercing voice, strangely contrasting with her ordinary utterance. "Answer, I say, or I will beat thee to the dust." And she continued her gestures, while the sufferings of the old hag evidently increased, and she crouched nearer and nearer to the ground, moaning out the words "Do not force me to speak. You'll repent it. You'll repent it." "Do not torment her thus, madam," cried Alizon, who, with Dorothy, looked at the strange scene with mingled apprehension and wonderment. "Much as I desire to know the secret of my birth, I would not obtain it thus." As she uttered these words, the old woman contrived to shuffle off, and disappeared behind the tomb. "Why did you interpose, Alizon?" cried Mistress Nutter, somewhat angrily, and dropping her hands. "You broke the power I had over her. I would have compelled her to speak." "I thank you, gracious lady, for your consideration," replied Alizon, gratefully, "but the sight was too painful." "What has become of her? Where is she gone?" cried Dorothy, peeping behind the tomb. "She has crept into this vault, I suppose." "Do not trouble yourself about her more, Dorothy," said Mistress Nutter, resuming her wonted voice and wonted looks. "Let us return to the house. Thus much is ascertained, Alizon, that you are no child of your supposed parent. Wait a little, and the rest shall be found out for you; and in the meantime, be assured that I take a strong interest in you." "That we all do," added Dorothy. "Thank you, thank you!" exclaimed Alizon, almost overpowered. With this they went forth, and, traversing the shafted aisle, quitted the conventual church, and took their way along the alley leading to the garden. "Say not a word at present to Elizabeth Device of the information you have obtained, Alizon," observed Mistress Nutter. "I have reasons for this counsel, which I will afterwards explain to you. And do you keep silence on the subject, Dorothy." "May I not tell Richard?" said the young lady. "Not Richard, nor any one," returned Mistress Nutter, "or you may seriously affect Alizon's prospects." "You have cautioned me in time," cried Dorothy, "for here comes my brother with our cousin Nicholas." And as she spoke, a turn in the alley showed Richard and Nicholas Assheton advancing towards them. A strange resolution had been produced in Alizon's feelings by the events of the last half hour. The opinions expressed by Dorothy Assheton as to her birth had been singularly confirmed by Mother Chattox. But could reliance be placed on the old woman's assertions? Might they not have been made with a mischievous intent? And was it not possible, nay probable, that in her place of concealment behind the tomb, the vindictive hag had overheard the previous conversation with Dorothy, and based her own declaration upon it? All these suggestions occurred to Alizon, but the previous idea having once gained admission to her breast, soon established itself firmly there, in spite of doubts and misgivings, and began to mix itself up with new thoughts and wishes, which, with other persons, were connected, for she could not help fancying she might be well born. And if so, the vast distance heretofore existing between her and Richard Assheton might be greatly diminished, if not altogether removed. So rapid is the progress of thought, that only a few minutes were required for this long train of reflections to pass through her mind, and it was merely put to flight by the approach of the main object of her thoughts. On joining the party, Richard Assheton saw plainly that something had happened, But as both his sister and Alizon laboured under evident embarrassment, he abstained from making inquiries as to its cause for the present, hoping a better opportunity of doing so would occur, and the conversation was kept up by Nicholas Assheton, who described in his wonted lively manner the encounter with Mother Chattox and Nance Redferne, the swimming of the latter, and the trickery and punishment of Potts. During the recital, Mistress Nutter often glanced uneasily at the two girls, but neither of them offered any interruption until Nicholas had finished, when Dorothy, taking her brother's hand, said, with a look of affectionate admiration, "You acted like yourself, dear Richard." Alizon did not venture to give utterance to the same sentiment, but her looks plainly expressed it. "I only wish you had punished that cruel James Device as well as saved poor Nance," added Dorothy. "Hush!" exclaimed Richard, glancing at Alizon. "You need not be afraid of hurting her feelings," cried the young lady. "She does not mind him now." "What do you mean, Dorothy?" cried Richard, in surprise. "Oh, nothing, nothing," she replied, hastily. "Perhaps you will explain," said Richard to Alizon. "Indeed I cannot," she answered, in confusion. "You would have laughed to see Potts creep out of the river," said Nicholas, turning to Dorothy. "He looked just like a drowned rat. Ha!" "You have made a bitter enemy of him, Nicholas," observed Mistress Nutter, "so look well to yourself." "I heed him not," rejoined the squire. "He knows me now too well to meddle with me again, and I shall take good care before I put myself in his power. One thing I may mention, to show the impotent malice of the knave. Just as he was setting off, he said, 'This is not the only discovery of witchcraft I have made to day. I have another case nearer home.' What could he mean?" "I know not," replied Mistress Nutter, a shade of disquietude passing over her countenance; "but he is quite capable of bringing the charge against you, or any of us." "He is so," said Nicholas. "After what has occurred, I wonder whether he will go over to Rough Lee to morrow." "Very likely not," replied Mistress Nutter; "and in that case Master Roger Nowell must provide some other person competent to examine the boundary line of the properties on his behalf." "Then you are confident of the adjudication being in your favour?" said Nicholas. "Quite so," replied Mistress Nutter, with a self satisfied smile. "The result, I hope, may justify your expectation," said Nicholas. "But it is right to tell you that Sir Ralph, in consenting to postpone his decision, has only done so out of consideration to you. If the division of the properties be as represented by him, Master Nowell will unquestionably obtain an award in his favour." "Under such circumstances he may," said Mistress Nutter; "but you will find the contrary turn out to be the fact. I will show you a plan I have had lately prepared, and you can then judge for yourself." While thus conversing, the party passed through a door in the high stone wall dividing the garden from the court, and proceeded towards the principal entrance of the mansion. Built out of the ruins of the abbey, which had served as a very convenient quarry for the construction of this edifice, as well as for Portfield, the house was large and irregular, planned chiefly with the view of embodying part of the old abbot's lodgings, and consisting of a wide front with two wings, one of which looked into the court, and the other comprehending the long gallery into the garden. The old north east gate of the abbey, with its lofty archway and embattled walls, served as an entrance to the great courtyard, and at its wicket ordinarily stood Ned Huddlestone, the porter, though he was absent on the present occasion, being occupied with the May Day festivities. Immediately opposite the gateway sprang a flight of stone steps, with a double landing place, and a broad balustrade of the same material, on the lowest pillar of which was placed a large escutcheon, sculptured with the arms of the family argent, a mullet, sable, with a rebus on the name, and ash on a tun. The great door to which these steps conducted stood wide open, and before it, on the upper landing place, were collected Lady Assheton, Mistress Braddyll, Mistress Nicholas Assheton, and some other dames, laughing and conversing together. Some long eared spaniels, favourites of the lady of the house, were chasing each other up and down the steps, disturbing the slumbers of a couple of fine bloodhounds in the courtyard, or persecuting the proud peafowl that strutted about to display their gorgeous plumage to the spectators. On seeing